So what is it?
I'm the doctor.
So what is it?
I'm the doctor.
So what is it?
I'm the doctor.
Only joking.
I'm the doctor.
So what is it?
I'm the doctor.
So what is it?
I'm the doctor.
Only joking.
I'm the doctor.
So what is it?
Small off-duty Czechoslovakian traffic warden.
So what is it?
I'm the doctor.
Only joking.
I'm the doctor.
So what is it?
I'm the doctor.
Alright dudes, it's time for another episode of It's Time to Rewind. I'm known as Bubbawheat. Not the Bubbawheat, not first name Bubba, last name Wheat, just Bubbawheat. This season is Red Who, where I'm covering British sci-fi like Red Dwarf and Doctor Who, and joining me 3 million years in the future via the TARDIS, once again, is my guest Carl from Hersing Around. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Happy to be your companion on the TARDIS today.
Yeah, although we are not talking about Doctor Who today, we are once again talking about Sapphire and Steel, and specifically Assignment 6, which is also referred to as The Trap, which was the 6th and final serial of the show, and it originally aired from August 19th through the 31st in 1982. And this is very much a final episode, and I do think that it was interesting watching it, I guess, jumping straight into the show, because watching it, I knew that it was the last episode, so I did have like genuine concern for the characters, because especially whenever you get kind of about a little like in the third and fourth episodes, you're worried about them dying, and I thought that was like a real possibility because I knew this was the last episode.
Yeah, it's funny because I really didn't even get that until late. I would argue even in the fourth episode, partially because, again, similar to before, I'm just trying to figure out what the hell's going on. I'm and this is interesting because this time around, compared to the first assignment that we watched, this one I felt like I might know where things were going, and then it veered way different than what I was expecting. And so I was trying to figure out how this was all going to wrap up, kind of, I guess, similar to you in one way, but I was trying to figure out how all the pieces fit together. Prior to, I guess, about what the end of the third episode is kind of where things start to fit together. But yeah, it was just, I guess I did not worry about them until probably some point in the final episode. But again, part of it was I was trying to just figure out how everything fit together and how this was all going to get either fixed or who was going to win, because really those last couple episodes you're trying to figure out who's going to win, I guess, is the way I would quote unquote win, I guess.
Yeah, and I guess to set up this one, it's called The Trap, and the Sapphire and Steel show up at this petrol station, as they call it. And there's like nobody around except this one couple, this man and a woman, and the woman is kind of like almost out of it. I would say, she's very, she resists talking. She's just kind of sitting there very stoically, and time is it reminded me a lot of another episode I covered this season, the Sarah Jane Adventures, the wedding of Sarah Jane Smith, because in that episode, the trickster trapped, the doctor and then Sarah Jane Smith in a single, in a time loop of a single second. And that's kind of what is happening here, that this petrol station is trapped in a time loop that's repeating a single second over and over. And so that they call, they pick up the phone, and it's like the time and temperature, and it just it's in the second where they're just repeating what time it is. and just like a little bit of, the previous or the latter sentence, and the clocks are kind of, I think it might be like a time loop of 2 or 3 seconds. It's not just not quite a single second. And at one point they turn on the radio and it's repeating like a clip from each station. And I thought that whole thing was interesting, and I thought was kind of well done here in this episode.
Yeah, again, similar to the first episode, the sound work really elevates the episode, that type of stuff. The weird part about the time loop is it's not a time loop like what I call the traditional time loop, or what I think of as a traditional time loop, where literally it's Groundhog Day. Like literally, like the whole thing is repeating. Like in this case, the characters themselves are kind of stuck in the time loop, but also not, because they're not repeating what they're saying. They're not, you know what I mean? Like there's stuff going on.
Yeah, it's like they're out of phase with time.
Yes,
is more like it, because like they can hear the sounds of traffic repeating just like outside of the time barrier, and it seems like there were people in this gas station / cafe, because there's like tables and a kind of a restaurant portion of it, and there's a pinball machine, and at a few points they kind of jump ahead like a few minutes, and the first time they jump ahead there's various movements, like the glass of water moves, and that, to me, that implies that the people that are in the actual reality, that are in in real time, are the ones that moved all that stuff, but there's no one physically in this specific area where Sapphire, Steel, and also in this one we have Silver, which to me and you, he was like just a brand new character. He had been there they before them for like 6 hours ahead of time. And apparently he does also appear in Assignment 3, which I did not watch.
Yeah, that's what. And the other thing is, like, having not watched 3, it's clear that they know each other, right? Which I guess even in 1, I mean, they kind of, they know Lead, but even this one, the relationship situation is very interesting, because like Silver is more like a, I don't know,
technician is what they were.
Oh yeah, he's a specialist. Sorry, I was more referring to his personality. You know what I mean? He's more of a personable guy, way more so than Steel, obviously, though that's not a high bar to clear.
Yeah, like one of the first things that he does in the first episode is he has a device which is, it reminds me a lot of the sonic screwdriver, and he's playing this slot machine, and he is using, his sonic screwdriver, which, that's not what they refer to it, but I think, for anybody who hasn't seen this and has seen Doctor Who, I say that, exactly what I mean. And he wins every single time.
Yeah. It looks almost like a bingo dauber, almost, like, because it has the end of it is kind of like almost like a squishy kind of thing. But you're absolutely right. The minute he started using it, my first thought was it's a sonic screwdriver, because it's operating just like the sonic screwdriver does in Doctor Who.
And he also has the various different abilities, where in this one he's able to create like exact copies of things, like I guess like a little, I think in the third episode, whenever the musician pops up as kind of I guess it'd be the third character in this, or fourth, I guess. They like want to see the tambourine that he has, and the musician doesn't want to give it up, and then he creates an exact duplicate so he can examine the musician's tambourine while he still has what he thinks is his tambourine.
Yeah. And the other thing that's interesting here is the way that the three of them communicate, especially in that first episode or two. There is between Sapphire and Silver, there's kind of this lighthearted banter, and Steel is clearly jealous of Silver. Like, it is not like it is completely obvious that he's jealous of Silver and Silver's relationship with Sapphire. So that was interesting to me. I'll talk more about the musician later, but I have some definite thoughts on that character and how it goes with some of the ideas behind the series itself and that type of thing.
And this again, it's Sapphire and Steel in general is a show that is so hard to describe. If you haven't seen it, it's like you have to watch it, and then even after watching it, you still don't really fully understand what's going on. But it's like there's kind of, like we said, they're stuck in this petrol station, and there's this couple, and then we eventually find out that the couple is from the 50s or from the 40s. Yeah, they're from the couple's from the 40s. And then they also at one point start seeing images of this old man. And then once they kind of finally get to have a discussion with this old man, they find out that the old man is from the 20s.
Right.
And then in episode 3, then this musician, this like minstrel musician who's got kind of a painted face and has these dolls kind of tied all over his, he looks like he's, a reject from a Renaissance fair.
Oh yeah. He looks like hobo with a shotgun. Like he is. I even wrote down transient. I was like, dude looks like a carny that that got kicked out of the carnival. That's like, he's weirder than just weird.
And he's got a very I don't know the name, but he's got like a very like low class British accent.
Yes, yeah. Well, the other piece that was interesting with him is that I thought was interesting is how they put the people in the different time periods that they chose. So they put him in the mid to late 50s, like 57. So that kind of fits in with his character, that type of stuff, given what's going on in Britain at the time, that type of stuff. And they put the couple in the post-war time period. So, and they even use some historical stuff, like they've got the ration booklets that they're using for food and stuff like that. Because if you know your British history and that type of stuff, that post-war Britain, like a lot of post-war Europe, struggled for a little bit, and that they were still rationing things for a while after the war. So that was that the history buff in me was, again, I like that type of stuff, just like I like the Cromwell references in the first season. But yeah, Johnny Jack is just friggin' weird. And I mean, he comes off in some ways as the most malicious, even more than the man of the couple.
He even relatively early on jokes about having sex with the woman. If you're bored, I forget how he puts it, but it's very slangy. About to have a little legs up fun, or something along those lines.
Yeah, I feel like he is designed for you not to like him. I feel like that character was definitely designed for, he comes off weird at first, but very quickly you're like, okay, you are not going to be a good guy.
Yeah, and again, and kind of unlike some of the previous ones, like all the characters in here are, not, at least in the first 2 episodes, no one is directly antagonistic towards Sapphire and Steel, but none of them are really working with Sapphire and Steel. Like the couple just very much just wants to be left alone. They're like, we're just going to wait here until time goes back to normal, or until we go back to our own time, because they can tell that they're in the future.
Yeah, and the woman's the only one that's antagonistic really at all, and it's just her verbalizing, "Don't tell him anything" or "Don't talk to him" kind of stuff. It's nothing like aggressive. It's just like that's which makes you make some assumptions about her that don't wind up being true. I'll just put it that way, because she comes off as the one that's kind of running the couple. I'll just say at the beginning, and that is not the case.
Yeah, I mean that whole dynamic is so bizarre. Even
Yes.
I'm even still not entirely sure what her deal is, because I guess let's kind of deal with the couple and their kind of arc, because in the first part, like you said, the woman is just very much, don't talk to them, don't, I'm not going to tell you my name. And then at one point she's like goes up to Steele and she's like, I have to tell you something important. And then she's like, no, I don't want to tell you here, like not now. I need to talk to all three of you at once. And then Steele goes in the other room where they have the car, which we'll kind of talk about. We'll circle back around to. And then Sapphire comes in to talk to her, and the woman's like, no, I don't want to talk to you. I want to talk to him. And then eventually all three of them are talking to her, and she's like, they're here to, they're coming after you. Like they're here for you. And then at one point, Silver like rips open her shirt and reveals these two like electronic things like just under her collarbone.
Yeah, they're like transistors or whatever, just under her like clavicle or whatever.
Yeah, and she starts like glitching out, and it's like, oh, she's a robot, and but then they take them off, and then she kind of powers down. But then it's more like that. And again, like none of this is really explained. You just kind of have to fill in the gaps. And, eventually she comes back around, and then it's implied that those were controlling her, and she actually is from the 40s, and she fell in love with this, this man that brought her here. And, she wants to help Sapphire and Steele. And then again, jumping all the way to the end, it's like, she was like in control this whole time, and she's like just playing with all of them.
Yeah. So, and the other weird part is there's total misdirection with them at the beginning, because at some point, and I can't remember if it's during the first or second episode, you come to assume that they're a couple who are cheating on their spouses and ran away together. That's why they were in the car. Like, that is totally the intimation in the whole thing, right? They talk about it, like, because, Sapphire and Steele and Silver are trying to figure out who these people are, where they came from, this whole thing. And so, like, I'm going down the rabbit hole of, well, like, what happened that they were doing this, and then they wound up here, and I'm focused on the car, I'm doing all this. All of which, in the end, doesn't mean a damn thing. like has nothing to do with anything.
It's a complete red herring.
Yeah, it is absolutely a red herring, and that's why I was saying I was really not focused on Sapphire and Steele and Silver, except for like I said, the interesting interpersonal dynamics between them and stuff in the first couple episodes, because I was trying to figure out the mystery. And which I'm sure is part, obviously, like you said, it's a red herring. It's part of the idea is there's going to be a misdirection. You're going to be looking over here while everything else is happening on the other side. And I felt like that happened several times during these 4 episodes, whereby you got focused on one thing, but the important thing was going on either underneath or somewhere else.
Yeah. And another, I think, kind of red herring is at one point they're kind of having an argument, and then I think Silver mentions, well, we should just leave. And that's kind of when the first time jump happens, where it kind of shifts forward 10 minutes. And, in my mind, it's like, oh, anytime they talk about leaving, that kind of triggers it. But we've, again, that's just another red herring, and apparently it's just the instability of this this time trap that's been created. That's it just keeps jumping forward. Eventually explain it's like it jumps forward 10 minutes and then 20 minutes and then 40 minutes and then it's going to quadruple after that, and then on into infinity.
See, the funny part to me is I read that differently after it ended. And again, it's just me. I'm sure I'm off on this. But my thought was that was the hint that they could get things, like if they just left, things would go back to normal, because the whole idea was the reason this was all happening is the other beings were trying to trap them. So if they left, then all of this would, like the petrol station thing, all the beings would wind up being gone, but the petrol station and all that would go back to normal, because again, it's a trap. It's not actually like there's nothing Sapphire and Steel and Silver could have done to fix what was going on, because what was going on was a trap for them, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that was my thought on thinking back. I'm like, maybe the idea was that this is the hint that if you leave, everything will be fine. But
yeah, and I also like the kind of slow reveal of of the fact that these three out of time characters are we eventually find out they are like almost like a rival group of time operatives.
yes.
Except they apparently don't have the ability to travel through time on their own. But at the same time, Sapphire at one point says that they work for a higher authority.
Yeah. Than they do. So, like, what's the bureaucratic levels here? Like, that's what I started thinking when she said that. I'm like, all right, so what's the levels here? So Sapphire and Steel work for middle management, and these people
well, I figured it was like a rival company.
Yeah, well, but my only thing with that was like she basically made it seem like there was a hierarchy, like with her statement, and I'm like, what's the hierarchy? Is this a hierarchy like we would think about it in a religion or a company or like some combo of them? So yeah, that totally had me going in another direction. Now I'm thinking, I'm like, all right, in the universe, what's the, you know what I mean?
But I did like how like the information for that was doled out. Like I believe the first hint is, like I mentioned, whenever Silver steals the tambourine and he's like analyzing it, and he's like, well, according to my instruments, this tambourine has never been used to make music. It's only been used to make sounds, which that calls into question the musician's history and his role in this, and also at one point Sapphire, I think after this, Sapphire like has this weird moment where she's just like in this using her ability and she's like, show me more, and seeing the shadow of the old man, and then she eventually sees like all three of the male characters like wearing suits instead of their time period disguises, and that kind of clues her into the fact that they're not what they seem, and that the three of them are these time operatives. And then we eventually find this box, which is which they explain is how these other time operatives are, how they travel through time, and because they're not able to do that themselves, they need outside assistance. And again, we have Silver creating an exact copy of the box, and so he is talented enough. Whenever he makes an exact copy, it's an exact working copy, and so him making a copy of the box is it's able to do what the other box is able to do. And that kind of speeds into the end game of the episode, where they start, they kind of open the box and they trap the old man and the musician, I think at one point he says, they send him back to the Triassic period.
Yes. Yes. So and it's the old school 70s, early 80s, like they're flying around into
Nothing,
the
or
space.
Starfield.
Yeah. Very Doctor Who, very like sci-fi of the time period kind of thing.
Mhm.
Probably with even less of a budget, I'd argue. um, but yeah, it's, and again, like that was the other piece. Like I kept thinking the car itself was going to be like the machine that was going to be the issue or whatever. And again, red herring. The car itself was
Mhm.
not. That the box was supposed to be in the car, though I guess it wound up being underneath the car when they
Well,
go to
because
the
they were
copy car or whatever. Like it's
well, because
that
they were
part was
pulling
weird.
things out.
Yeah,
They were searching the car because again, the limitations of their abilities. Sapphire says that he can only make an exact copy of small things, so he couldn't make an exact copy of the car was too big. But Sapphire was able to create a visual copy so that he could drive the real car around the corner, and so they can investigate it without being seen by the other people.
right. So they put it in basically because it's a petrol station. There's like a garage, and
Mhm.
they put it in there. And then the guy finds it underneath the car, like it fell out or something. Because there's a bunch of stuff kind of on the ground,
Mhm.
which was weird. But again, for Sapphire and Steel, it wasn't that weird. But yeah. So
And this is a shorter one at only 4 episodes. I think it moves along at a nice pace, but it still has like the creepy elements, and I think it has good kind of cliffhangers at the end of each episode. And then we get to the ending, which again is just kind of bizarre because again, going back to the copy of the box. He mentions that you can see into the future, and then Sapphire is like, well, I want to look into it. And he's like, are you sure? And she just sees space, and she's like, I saw our future, and it's basically nothing. And then and then they try to escape, and they get caught by, the man from the beginning, from supposedly is from the 40s. And they have like a box battle almost.
yes.
And he gets the quick draw, and they come back to like or we kind of cut to like just the couple in the. I'm not sure if it's because it looks different. I'm not sure if it's supposed to be a different location.
Yeah, I assume it looks like it's a cafe.
Mm-hmm.
And it definitely looks different than the kind of cafe area of the gas station. So my
Right.
assumption is it is a different place. But I get how it kind of has a little bit of the same look, so it could be confusing. But to me, my assumption was it was a different place. But
Yeah, and then it's the two of them, and they're kind of talking almost as if they were still in the 40s almost. And then Sapphire and Steel kind of walk through the door and sit down, almost like they don't know each other. And then they have this kind of standoff, and they call the woman to them, because at this point the woman's been seemingly on their side. And then they're like, okay, now turn the box towards you and open it slowly. And then he opens the box, and it's just a travel chess set. And they're like, huh? And then the couple like I mean, there's like a little bit more to it, but basically the couple then just disappear. And then the Sapphire and Steel are like, thrown off, and they're like, what's going on? And then he opens his box, and his box is also just a travel chess set.
yep.
And then they go to the front door and open it, and then it's just a Starfield. And then they open the window, and it's just a Starfield. And then they reveal, oh, this is, that this is nothingness. That I saw our future, and this is our future. We're we're trapped. This is kind of at the end, and then roll credits, and it's like, oh my god, they basically just killed Sapphire and Steel.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're not dead, but
they're effectively dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're stuck basically in this, endless space kind of thing. So I did like it because if they ever did reboot the series, like let's say a couple years afterwards, which has happened before, certain British TV, then there was a way that you could get them out of there, and they could go back to work or whatever. They didn't die, but yeah, they're kind of they're like the Superman villains in the what I'm talking about,
the Phantom Zone.
Yeah, there you go, the Phantom Zone. I could not come up with the name, but like they're just kind of stuck out here in this little weird time trap in space. It
also felt very like Twilight Zone-y too.
Oh yeah, yep. And that's one of the things I liked about the series is that the writer pulls from kind of these different tropes and or pieces that have either been around or kind of worked together. Like the first one felt more like a ghost story. This one felt a little bit of a thriller aspect to it. And I mean, especially the ending is, definitely not what you're expecting.
Yeah, and the second one really feels like a ghost story. Like it's got the seance in it. And then, yeah, and I thought this was pretty good. Although, I do want to jump back to my favorite one, which was the Assignment 4, which it's another 4-parter. So it's another one of the shorter ones. And it's kind of referred to as The Man Without a Face. And I thought that one was like really effective, and it's short, so it doesn't draw things out too much, and it also kind of has aspects of a ghost story, but it's also like reminiscent of like Slender Man too, like the origins of Slender Man, because they go to this apartment building, and they have all these. They eventually find out like the landlord is missing. And there's also a woman tenant who's kind of like it's kind of implied that she's like almost like a strip club dancer, but not maybe not full on strip club, but but she has like short hair, and then she like puts on a wig to go out to work at a club is I think how she refers to it, and she's very kind of happy go lucky. And we also eventually find out that her roommate has been missing as well, but she's like, oh, she's probably just gone off. And the landlord is missing, but he's been replaced with a new landlord. And as they're talking to the woman, she's like, can you describe his face? And she's like, I know I talked to him, face to face, but I can't for the life of me think of what his face looks like. And the old landlord was also a photographer, so there's all these old photographs, and he's got like a dark room with the red light in there, and there's all these kind of ghost children who they're not quite sepia tone, but they're almost sepia tone, and they're also kind of out of time. That they seem like 1800s. In the early days of the photography, like, late 1800s, early 1900s, they have that kind of look to them, as they're also kind of singing nursery rhymes here and there. And, they eventually find out that this man without a face, who a lot of times he is shown like kind of with the blank face, and they eventually find out that he exists in all photographs. Like he's always like kind of either behind a wall or someone that's turned away. And there's some really great moments. But there's some really great moments, because there's one point where Sapphire and Steel are talking to the man without a face, and they each see him as a different actor. And I think that's done really well. And also there's a great moment whenever Sapphire and Steel are talking to each other telepathically, and then the man without a face just kind of jumps into their conversation. And it's like, oh, he can hear them and talk to them. And he's like, oh, are we talking this way? And that's like just a great moment. And then there's a really fantastic like horror moment where they eventually find the woman's roommate in one of the photographs, like in she's like in a window, like kind of in the background, and they have to have a magnifying glass, and they're able to reach out to her, and like she doesn't move within the photograph, but they can talk to her. And then at one point, the man without a face, I guess the like what they're talking to her is a copy of the photograph, and the man without a face, he has the original, and he burns the original, and she is screaming, and he kills her by burning the photograph. And it's like, wow, that is dark.
That sounds darker than the 2 series that I watched. That's for sure.
Yeah, but that's, and I won't go into too much more of that one, but that one was definitely my favorite one. And, whenever I was kind of prepping for this, I started with the assignment 1, and I was like, I'm not that sure into it. I'll try assignment 2 and then see how it goes. And I liked assignment 2 better, but then, I was kind of running out of time, and I was like, I put it out on Threads. It's like, between assignments 3, 4, and 5, is there any one that I should watch? And then somebody recommended, assignment 4, The Man Without a Face. And I was like, okay. And I'm glad that they recommended that one. Although, part of me kind of wishes that I would have watched 3, so that way I would have been more familiar with Silver before going into 6, but I think I made the right choice. And, I'm not entirely sure if I'm going to go back around to assignments 3 and 5. I might go back and watch 3. But, I do like the show, but it's just it's so different from anything else. It's just hard to describe.
It's if Mulder and Scully were aliens and we're not working for the FBI, but we're just going around working for the Time Bureau, maybe. And like, if you combined a bunch of like different sci-fi stuff and then just said nothing's going to make sense, that's Sapphire and Steel to me. Like, and I should say nothing's going to make sense. Plenty of stuff makes sense, but there's just some weird elements. I do find it interesting that you said that the series you liked best was 4 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
That I do think that based on my experience with the first season, I feel like with these type of stories, 4 to 5 episodes is probably the perfect length. I think these stories aren't big enough that you want 6, 8, 10 episodes.
Yeah, although I think I would say, like, if I were going to rank the ones that I watched, clearly assignment 4, The Man Without a Face, was my favorite. I think assignment 2 and 6 are pretty close. Like, I do, even though assignment 2 is the longest at 8 episodes, but I think they really have, it really has a nice feel to it. And I think as long as you don't try to watch it all at once, I think I might even put that as my number 2. And then the assignment 1 was definitely my least favorite. Like, it kind of had the annoying kid the whole time. Like he was the worst kind of human character because, assignment 4, the woman, I think she was a fantastic character. The old ghost hunter from assignment 2, I thought he was a fantastic character. And in the trap, it's kind of hard because, the woman, she was not a great character. And, the other 3 were, and she also ended up being like the kind of in league with the villain of the piece. So, I guess in a way, almost Silver was kind of the, the tertiary character, even though he was, he's one of them. He's not a human.
Mm-hmm.
But do you think you're going to go back and watch any more of it?
I might. I'm with you, which is interesting because normally with serials, like with serial type stuff, which more and more like more of the post 2000 stuff is not everything contained within an episode type of television. Like this is not that. This is more a story that's going, that type of stuff. Most of the time when I'm watching those type of shows, I can binge those because I want to know what's next.
Mhm.
Because there was a cliffhanger, what's next, that type of stuff. Like I just finished watching The Pit on Max, and that show, we were watching it week to week. We started watching it the first week it came out, and like I was ready for the next episode like immediately. With Sapphire and Steel, like I need to sit with it. Like, what the hell did I just watch? So I feel like I possibly would go back and watch the other series. I mean, definitely, it sounds like 4 is really good. So I might do that, but if I do it, I don't think it would be how I wound up watching both times I watched season 1. I watched them pretty quickly, and if not like in one sitting, in a couple sittings. And series 6 I watched basically in one sitting. I think no, I take that back. It was 2. I watched episodes 1 and 2, and then I watched episodes 3 and 4. But
Yeah, for the most
if
part, I as I watch the show, I never watch more than 2 episodes in a row. But,
okay. That would probably be me. Like I'd probably want to do it 1 episode at a time, 2 at the most, because like you kind of have to sit with some of it. Not even just to figure it out, like because in all you're not going to figure it out, but just like to think about it and that type of stuff. There's just so many different elements and that type of stuff.
Pun intended.
And I love Joanna Lumley's awesome. So that
Mm.
and she does this character really, really well.
Yeah, that was the one thing that I meant to bring up, but I forgot about because I'm not super familiar with her. Like I've seen a handful of episodes of Absolutely Fabulous, but it's been ages, and she is a very different character from I even looked it up. Is it Patsy? Yeah. She's a very different character from Patsy. She plays it very straight. She is like does a good job as a true. There's no comedy from her whatsoever. She's played it absolutely straight, and I think she does very well. Like she is. I think that David McCallum, he does what he was asked to do, but he is kind of asked to play an unlikable character, and that's kind of a shame. I think maybe if it went longer, or it makes sense because he is playing Steel, and so you expect him to be a hard character.
Right.
But I think they made him a little bit too hard and too rigid of a character.
And I think I would agree with that if they didn't bring in the specialist. I think using lead and silver in the seasons that I watched, it makes that work.
Yeah, and in
use them,
and an assignment for the human character, she really is kind of that soft element and the more maybe not comedic elements, but she's definitely the lighter character.
Got you. Well, and here's my thing with Joanne Lumley. Every scene where she's in a scene, because there are scenes where she's not in it. You know what I mean? That it's either David McCallum or the other characters or whatever. But every scene that I watched in both these series that she's in, she's the commanding presence in the scene. Doesn't matter what the scene's about, whatever. And that to me, the best actors, like when they're in a scene, even if they're with great actors also in the scene, their command and approach and that type of stuff, their gravitas just stands out. I think about like the Red movies where you've got a bunch of famous actors in them. Have you ever watched the Red movies, Bubba?
Like the Bruce Willis one?
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. My thing with those is, you got Bruce Willis, you got Morgan Freeman, you got John Malkovich, all this type of stuff. You put Helen Mirren in those scenes, Helen Mirren is the most impressive actor in whichever scene she's in. And it's just that type of gravitas kind of thing, that kind of presence that I don't know that you can even teach that in acting school, but Joanna Lumley has that in this series. And it's very different than AbFab. Very, very different, which is also very impressive. That's a very different type of acting, that type of thing. But yeah, I would, and I like David McCallum. Like we wound up, and I can't remember all the stuff I watched his for the when he passed away for the Earthing Around episode we did. But this wasn't out of line for his acting, I would argue as well. I mean, he was never none of his parts that I recall were very emotional. So it makes sense why they cast him as Steel. And I really enjoyed the actor who played Silver. I very much enjoyed. I think his repartee and his nonverbals were good, and I enjoyed the guy who played Lead in the first series.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me and watching. What was it? Like 5 hours of almost 5 hours of a show to come on and talk to me about it. But it's been I'm glad that I picked this because I had a feeling that we would go for a while, and we talked I think a lot longer than I expected because there's just so much to cover. But it's been fun, and hopefully people listening to this, if they haven't seen it, they'll at least maybe check out Assignment 4. It's not really, it's definitely not one of the like a linear show, and you're gonna get a little bit of explanation in the first assignment, but I think it doesn't hurt to skip that one because you're not getting enough explanation anywhere that you can just kind of jump into whichever assignment, and you're going to be lost.
Regardless of wherever you come in.
Yeah, but you're not going to be any more lost if you had started at episode 1 or not. But one more time, why don't you let people know where else you can be found online?
I'm a co-host of Rabbit Hole Podcast's Hersing Around, a podcast about the recently deceased. And so with that podcast, we're on all the socials at Hersing Around Pod, Facebook, Insta, X, Blue Sky. I'm sure I'm missing one or two, but so that's probably the best place to find me. You can also find me, I believe, at Blue Sky at Carl Putnam. And yeah, so come and listen to our podcast. It's fun. We play a game at the end. So yeah.
And as always, I'm Bubbawheat, and you can find me on all the socials where I'm at Bubbawheat. I'm most active on Threads if you want to keep up to date with all the various things that I'm doing and watching and all that stuff. We also have a Facebook group, It's Time to Rewind, a time loop group, and you can join that to discuss episodes as they come out and also have other discussions about time loops across any and all media. It's welcome there. And until next time, smoke me a kipper and I'll regenerate before breakfast next week.